Well, here we are again, just you and me and the unmedicated, frenzied and frog-boiled political right that we are forced to endure every single day. Let's check in on some of our friends, shall we?
Now, this is about the case of an asylum seeker, Hadush Gebrselassie Kabatu. He has been found guilty of all charges.
I don't believe human rights lawyers should be able to get involved in this.
If you were phoning me and some of my LBC colleagues saying those people in Epping and Nuneaton and other parts of the country, they're all right-wing and they're racist.
Now, this is something that they like to do quite often. I don't know if you've noticed it. They like to pretend that we say that anyone that had an issue was racist.
If you were phoning me and some of my LBC colleagues saying those people in Epping, they're all right-wing and they're racist.
They ascribe that one-size-fits-all ignorance catch-all to us as though that's what we were saying. And I've never said that everyone that goes out and protests in Epping or has an issue with asylum is racist. I've literally never said that.
They're all right-wing and they're racist.
And it's people like me to whom he's referring there. He's sort of asking people like me for an apology and acknowledgement. Like, there, do you accept now that this creature has been found guilty of one of the worst crimes imaginable, do you accept that everyone that had an issue with it was not racist like you suggested, Aid? But no, I don't think, I never thought everyone was far right and racist. There were a lot of far right people and racists. Patriotic Alternative, Tommy Robinson jumping on the back of it. The UKIP guy, Nick Tony or whatever his name is. Rupert Lowe. Then separate to all of that lot, you also had a load of Kool-Aid drunk, radicalized morons, just easily led, hugely impressionable, gullible idiots. There's a lot of those guys too, Nick.
They're all right-wing and they're racist.
Then you had a load of concerned locals, concerned parents who, for reasons best known to themselves, took their concerns over what happens to British women and girls to people like Tommy Robinson and all of his protesters, 70% of which at one of these protests, the people who were arrested were found to have had a history of domestic violence. They chased the support, approval and attention of Nigel Farage, who himself seems to like hanging around with rapists. In fact, until very recently, a quarter of Reform's MPs had a history of domestic violence or violence on their partner. So no, I don't necessarily think that everyone that protests in these marches or hung around outside the Epping Hotel, I don't think they were all far right and horrendously racist. Stupid? Yeah. Easily led? Yeah. Politically ignorant? Yeah. Willfully exploited? Yeah, but not necessarily like innately horrendously racist themselves or far right.
You're big enough now to ring up and say, actually, I got that wrong.
So yeah, again, like what he's doing is he's suggesting that we are suggesting that everyone there was racist and far right, because then he's in a position to demand this apology and elevate himself up onto the moral high ground. That's the device that we're working with here, isn't it, Nick?
You're big enough now to ring up and say, actually, I got that wrong. This is a convicted sex offender, and it's understandable that parents and grandparents...
And again, the other thing that he's doing here is he's saying this is a convicted sex offender, which it is. He is now. This Ethiopian man has been found guilty, but he wasn't a convicted sex offender then, was he? You're taking the facts and the cemented substance of the situation now, and then you're throwing it back to yourself like 6 weeks ago. Like, how dare you lefties stand in our way back in late July or whatever the fuck it was? How dare you stand in our way back in late July, early August, when all we were trying to do was raise awareness and get some sort of resolution to this convicted sex offender that we could not possibly have known that he was a guilty and convicted sex offender back then. Like I was saying on the paper review, it's not that people on the left don't want to see people punished. It's actually the complete inverse of that. It's like, we just want to see whoever did the thing get arrested, charged and jailed and go through a sane and reasonable judicial process. And that now has happened, right? Meanwhile, on the right, they're like, we heard someone somewhere in the ugliest corners of X suggest that maybe this Ethiopian asylum seeker might have been responsible for it, even though a year ago, almost a carbon copy situation resulted in riots and we were all left with eggs on our faces. But still, right now, we need mob justice immediately. Like, are you sure? Are you sure that's the right way to handle these things? Really? Yes, Aid. Yes. Pitchforks and torches at dawn. Put him in the Wicker Man.
No, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah!
You're big enough now to ring up and say, actually, I got that wrong.
So no, sorry, Nick. Not big enough at the moment to admit that I got that wrong. I think I, like many other people, just wanted to see due process carried out without a moral panic, xenophobia and hysteria just descending us into some sort of post-apocalyptic dystopian street lynching. That's all we wanted to avoid. That's it.
If you were phoning me and
I mean, I will say this, right? It's nice to see him
in other parts of the country,
with the green glasses on. He's wearing the green glasses today. Some days, I don't know if you've noticed this, he wears red glasses. I like to think of them as like, it's like a mood ring for his face. You know, if he comes into the studio wearing his green glasses, that's, you know, you're fine to proceed. The green man, up traffic light style. You know, today he's going to talk about something that we're all pretty much on board with, like how do we bring down Putin? Why are the trains so bad? Are bankers' bonuses too high? Something we're all on board with. He's, you know, green, mood ring. They're glowing green. He's in a good psychological space. But when those fuckers start glowing red, ooh, you're in trouble then. Then you're in for an interview with Farage, lawless Britain, and 2 hours of phone-ins on how we stop the boats. You know, if he's got the green rims on, he's in a good space. If he's got the red, if he's glowing red and he's plum-cheeked as well, like he's been out till 3 a.m, knocking back port with his old mate Kelvin Mackenzie, oh, are you in for a rough ride? You better bring him his coffee in Danish quick before he spends the first hour and a half of his show singing the national anthem and trying to convince the rest of us that asylum seekers don't have blood like you and I. Their hearts pump tar or something. I'm sure he wouldn't go that far. I'm just saying, you know, it's a bit like seeing a mood ring around his face, maybe, if you're a producer at LBC. Anyway, let's check in on our old friend Dan Wootton. I'm sure he'll be handling this news, this development, the verdict very, very sanely, very reasonably.
Guilty.
All right.
Guilty.
Like, who is he arguing with? Like, is there a cameraman, like, just off the thing? Like, doesn't that come off as like the last like a punctuating correction in an argument? Like, somebody's just said, "Oh, I think he was found." Was he found not guilty or guilty? And Wootton's like immediately correct, guilty.
Guilty.
But that is a weird way to start your show, isn't it?
The parents of Epping were not far-right agitators.
All right, okay. So a text has gone out somewhere. This is the line that they're all sticking to. Is like, well, we weren't all far right, were we? We weren't all racist. Because look, the verdict's in now, and we were right.
Well, the left said it was racism.
The parents of Epping were not far-right agitators.
If you were phoning me and some of my LBC colleagues saying those people in Epping, they're all right-wing and they're racist.
We were quite furious about this smear they've been constantly called, this far-right smear. Well, it seems to me the people of Epping have been vindicted at least.
Vindicted at least.
I guess that's the line, isn't it? Wootton and Ferrari clearly on the same WhatsApp group here.
They were absolutely horrified about an illegal migrant, fresh off the boat, potentially from Ethiopia or Eritrea or Afghanistan or Jamaica, who knows and who cares?
He's from Ethiopia, Dan. We've established that.
Habush Kabuto is now guilty. We can talk about the horrifying details of this case, which means this animal scumbag, who should not have been here in the first place, is not going to be immediately on a deportation plane out of this country.
I mean, I do think it's interesting that Dan Wootton, who is also not British. He's a Kiwi and has also found himself questioned under suspicion with the police, is also still here. I don't think he's been convicted. I don't think there's any suggestion that Dan Wootton has been convicted of anything. But still, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, he was accused at one point, and I'm sure he denied the charges to the hilt. But he was accused at one point of, like, sexual blackmail, catfishing.
I do also note that there are dark forces out.
I mean, the changes to the ECHR that people like Wootton and all of his followers are advocating for, somebody in his position a couple of years ago probably would have been kicked out. So yeah, maybe there's an upside to this ECHR stuff after all.
Do you remember he invited the young girl back to the Bell Hotel? Told her, oh, we can have a bit of fun in there. We could make some lovely Jamaican babies.
I mean, look, don't get it twisted here, all right? The stuff that this guy is accused of is obviously very, very troubling. And it is right that he goes to jail. That was never a question mark for me. The question mark for me, as I've tapped into already, is like, why would you let the far right or people like Tommy Robinson or Nick Tony co-opt the cause for which you are marching? The question mark for me was like, why are people who supposedly care this much about the safety of women and girls allowing themselves to be represented and spoken for by people like Nigel Farage, who seems to have no problem hanging around with a bunch of sociopathic rapists? Or Tories who closed so many hundreds of domestic violence shelters over the last 14 years. But now that incredulity is being misrepresented and contorted by people like Ferrari and Dan Wootton, as though back 6 weeks ago, people like me didn't think that the survivors and the victims at the time had a right to be upset. That's fundamentally, patently not true.
You're big enough now to ring up and say, actually, I got that wrong.
We're not far-right agitators.
We did think that they had a point. We just objected to the far right co-opting it. And if you think there wasn't a far right footprint being left at each and every one of these protests, if you don't think that Patriotic Alternative, Tommy Robinson, the EDL, Rupert Lowe with his, I think we should put all of the refugees in a tent on some Scottish island and let the midges do the rest. If you don't think that all of that is far right, here's my question for you. What to you is far right? It's like if you're surrounded by flags and people chanting, send them back, harpoon the diggies, string them up like the Wicker Man, set fire to the hotel. If that's not far right to you, what is far right to you?
Just another video with Adrian Thompson.